Hi, it's Dr. Steve. For today's online class, let's explore gangs and how to recognize potential gang members in the classroom. Can you recognize gang signs or gang graffiti? Would you recognize it if you ran into it in your school? Here's an example. Just a few years ago, a Hazleton area school teacher saw a test paper that was handed in by a student with these letters written at the bottom of the page. Luckily, this teacher, while she didn't recognize just what it was, felt there was something suspicious here. She showed this paper to their school resource officer and recognized this as shorthand for a mighty Latin king and queen nation. And that's one of the gangs that have infiltrated Luzerne County. So here we have three photos of graffiti on walls, one of which is a local photo taken last year. What do you think? Do these represent gang graffiti? The first one on the upper left is just a nice piece of artwork. The one on the right at Wilkesboro General Hospital does not represent gang graffiti, but rather is mourning the loss of a rap star, and that arrow pointing up is saying, like, we're praising that particular individual, we're lifting them up. The one on the lower left probably is not, although we do see the 666, but there is nothing else indicating gang there. What about these two sets of graffiti? Yes, both of these represent gang graffiti. Now, granted, the one on the lower right is a giveaway here because they're indicating the Crips. But besides that, notice the six-pointed star. Notice the number 6 in the middle. The other one is the almighty Latin king and queen nation. Notice the crown up here and the K for king. Notice this symbol right here, this trident pointing up, saying up with this gang. So a positive statement about this gang. Notice this symbol right here. Notice that star, and notice that there's a cut right here. So if there's a cut, or if there's a breaking of another gang symbol, and especially if there's a breaking of a gang symbol and a trident pointing down, which would look something like this, in the middle of a gang symbol. So you'd have a part of the symbol up top, part of the symbol on the bottom, break it in half and put this trident in the middle. That would definitely be a gang symbol, and also a symbol saying down with that other gang while we're raising up our gang. So when we talk about a gang, we're actually referring to a criminal street gang, which is simply a group of people who work together, who come together in a group, and normally conform to one or more of the following items. They have a common group name. They share symbols or tattoos. They do a graffiti that will be similar to each other, so it's a common graffiti. They may share a common style of dress, have certain colors that are common amongst their group. They get together, they congregate, they lay claim to a particular area, geographic area, and they also meet. They get together. Notice that when we talk about gangs, we could be talking about just a local gang, or we could be talking about a local gang who is associated with a national criminal gang. In both cases, normally they are involved with distribution and selling of drugs. And we also have the existence of gangs in prison. Many gangs are drug trafficking organizations. So it's really like a business where they're making money by selling drugs. If you take a look at the graphic that's provided here, you can see that drugs are coming into the state of Pennsylvania from a variety of places, including New York and New Jersey, and Philadelphia. Drugs will then travel up as far as Williamsport and also Lancaster, and we also have drugs coming into the state from southern states as well. One of the large areas of, other than Philadelphia, in our state to have a lot of drug sales and drug activity, drug trafficking, is Lancaster. Realize that gangs are not new. They've had a presence in our country since the inception of our country. When you think about it, as people immigrated into this country and they entered through Ellis Island into New York City, people felt comfortable joining with other people of their ethnic background. And as they grouped together, we had formation of places like Little Italy, section of New York, Chinatown, and so on. Now, those people were not street gangs, but the idea of grouping together and crime sometimes arising from that, is not new. Now, the street gangs are believed to have entered Luzerne County, our local area, in about the 1990s. So how many gangs are active in Pennsylvania, and which gangs do we find here? Well, we definitely find the Crips and the Bloods. We have a lot of drug trafficking organizations. We've got the Mexican DTOs and the Dominican DTOs. In addition, in our area, we have several outlaw motorcycle gangs. In particular, we have the Outlaws, Pagans Motorcycle Club, and also Hell's Angels, and to a lesser extent, some of the other motorcycle gangs that we find in New York City and some other areas. On Blackboard, I have listed these two resources, both from Operation Gang Up. Operation Gang Up was a local law enforcement response and investigation into this issue. And they had grant funding, and they produced some really helpful materials. So the first one is the Helpful Resources for Teachers, which is a brochure on what to expect, what to find, what to look for, warning signs, and how to deal with potential gang members in the classroom. Very good reading, very helpful for all teachers to know. The other one listed here, the Eastern Pennsylvania Drug and Gang Assessment, was produced in 2011. Now, although that seems like a little bit older publication, that is the most recent set of statistics that we have in this most comprehensive form, and still very, very good information for everybody to realize. So I have posted both of these on Blackboard. In our area, you are more likely to die by homicide in Wilkes-Barre or in Hazleton than in many of the major cities in our country, like New York City or Chicago. I realize that we're looking per capita. In other words, if you look at the total number of crimes that are committed and violence, it's going to be larger because there's higher population in places like New York City and Chicago. But if you look at per capita, you're actually finding more crime here in this area. One fact that is very unfortunate is that locally, if someone is going to die of gang violence, it is likely to be a young adult of color and a young person. Average age of many of the victims is about 27. Now, while we are considering gangs and gang violence, I don't want you to be overly afraid of things, because sometimes we see in news media and social media, we read about the violence that's happening in our area, and it's gang related, and it seems like it might be random. In other words, you and I might think, well, maybe if I'm walking on the streets, maybe I'll just be randomly affected by this. And the answer to that is no, that's not true. Because gang-related activity is not random at all. Normally drugs are involved, and victims often know their assailants, and gangs don't go out and just randomly kill people. It all has to do with power struggles, rival gangs, and different issues that occur when people are selling and buying drugs. So you are safe in terms of this if you are not out there involved in the drug trade. I posted references here to several articles in local newspapers to indicate that in recent years we're seeing more evidence of gangs in this area, both in prisons and also just in the communities in general. So where do schools come into this, and how can teachers help? Let's start by considering, why do kids join a gang? Typically, research shows to have a sense of belonging. They want to belong to a group. They emulate tough people whom they're admiring. They might want to fight back against poverty, fight back against society who they feel is holding them or pressing them, pushing them down. They like to gain respect. They like to escape bad situations in their home life. And in some cases, they simply are introduced to gangs and gang life by peers, and they give in to peer pressure. The idea of respect in a gang is a very, very important concept. They're very concerned, members of gangs, about being respected and having their members and their gang as a whole respected by others. So as a teacher, never speak out disrespectfully about a gang. First of all, you might get hurt in the process, but second of all, you're not going to be able to reach a student who might be considering or might have joined a gang. If you're speaking disrespectfully, you're going to close them off to hearing what you have to say. Most gangs employ some type of initiation rite in order to join the gang, and this rite helps determine if the candidate is worthy of membership. The most severe type of initiation into a gang is blood in and blood out. And blood in simply means that blood must be shed. In other words, someone has to kill someone in order to be allowed into the gang. And most members never can leave a gang. And blood out refers to that. Either they die or the gang kills them. So very severe initiations into gangs. So gangs who use the blood-in, very serious initiation rite, why do they do that? Well, the answers are very practical and pragmatic. Number one, if law enforcement officials want to pretend to be a gang member and infiltrate the gang in hopes to arrest those people, they're not going to do the blood-in piece. It also shows internally that members are loyal to the gang because of this serious thing that they have done. And also, if a gang member has to perform a violent act like this, he or she will not turn other people in, because they also can be turned in because they're also guilty of those serious crimes as well. Realize that not all gangs require a blood-in initiation into the gang. In some cases, gangs will have a jumped-in way. In other words, the gang members will severely beat the candidate looking to join the gang. You could be blessed in, and that simply means you don't have to be initiated in because you're already known as a bad person. You have a strong reputation. Some people are sexed in, where sexual activities are conducted with gang members. And then some gangs will ask, instead of a blood-in, they'll ask someone to commit some violent act of some sort. There's also an urban legend, and so I'd like to point this out as well, because it comes around on social media from time to time, and it'll say something like this, like, if you see a car driving down the street at night and that car does not have any headlights on, don't flash your headlights at them in order to just kind of remind them that their lights are turned off, because that's really a gang activity, and That's the way that the gang will identify someone who they're going to kill or do violence to or rob or something like that. This is an urban legend. This has not been found to be true. So realize not everything that we read is true. What kinds of things should you as a teacher be on the lookout for regarding possible gang activity in your school or classroom? Here's 4 major signs that experts tell us to watch for: graffiti, hand signs, certain tattoos, and certain types of dress. And realize that schools are a prime ground for recruiting new gang members. So let's take a look at these items more closely. When we look at gang graffiti and different clothing styles and so on, which ones are associated with different gangs? Well, the Latin Kings incorporate the number 5 in a lot of their symbols. And their graffiti and their tattoos have variations of either a 5-pointed crown or a 5-pointed star. Now the Bloods normally have tattoos with initials like MOB, member of the Bloods. The Crips have a way of moving their hands. They do a hand symbol that indicates the letter C, representing the name of their gang. On the picture on the right, you can see a tattoo that contains a 5-pointed star, and that's often the symbol of the Blood gang. And just to reiterate and reinforce that gang activity is infiltrating our local area more and more, notice on the left-hand picture, this is gang graffiti that was found on a wall in Luzerne County recently. Gangs usually adopt some type of clothing that is common to all members of their gang. So they look for a gang look in their clothing. You realize that not all students who might wear this style of clothing are necessarily members of gangs. Sometimes they find something like in the local mall and they might just like the look of it and not even realize that they're flashing the colors of a gang. One of the most common and easiest ways for a gang to adopt some type of clothing to represent their gang is the baseball cap. And there are, even locally, we have stores that will sell baseball caps that have odd-looking colors. So, for example, if you look at the New York Yankees, and you know that they have a blue and a white coloration, choice of colors, if you happen to see a New York Yankees hat and you saw like odd colors, like a red in there, or you say, well, boy, that kind of looks odd. That doesn't remind me of what the team normally has. And that might very well be a gang-related clothing item. I provided these 2 links on Blackboard, and they're 2 companies online, and they sell gang-affiliated hats and clothing. So take a moment and take a look at those. Here's an example of Crips and Bloods hats. Notice they are common symbols. They're reflecting sports teams that everybody would know, but yet the colors are different. It's good for teachers to know to recognize these types of signs because they may indicate gang activity. On the left, we see a hat worn sometimes by the Bloods and also by the Folk Nation. On the right-hand side, you can see a hand signal of the Bloods, in which both hands are put together in such a way as to spell out the word blood. Another thing we have to watch for is the flashing of colors, and we may see this in and around schools. In this middle picture, so here's just a picture of someone pulling out the inside of their pocket. It could be a front pocket, could be a back pocket. Now, normally it's just a white color. What happens if you saw, let's say, a red color and someone purposely pulled out that material to show that. Well, we call that flashing the gang's colors. So if you're in the halls of a school and you saw some students doing this, well, there's a reason why they're showing those colors. Are they looking to get into some type of violence? Are they threatening another gang? This is something that, again, it may not indicate anything, but you do have to be aware of this type of typical activity performed by gang members. I have also posted the video that's listed below here on Blackboard for you to watch. It will show you more examples of gang clothing and signs. Realize if you're a person faint of heart, so to speak, you'll hear some graphic language in the song that's used in the background of this video. But it's really interesting to see, and because one of the things that it indicates to me is, boy, these things are happening around us, and it could be right in our classroom, and we wouldn't even recognize it. So take a moment and watch this video. It's only a moment, about 2-3 minutes long, but it's very, very helpful. On Blackboard, I also posted this video, a video that's going to talk about the People Nation and the Folks Nation, which are the two main groupings of gangs found in our country. If you'd like to learn more about gang graffiti and how to recognize it, this is a very, very helpful video. Again, only a few minutes long, put together by law enforcement officials. And what you'll find is gang graffiti is very complex, and it's actually a highly evolved language. So take a look at this video because it will provide very helpful information to you so you can recognize the difference between just regular graffiti and actual gang-related activities. So let's simulate a gang. What would it take to create a gang on our campus? Well, we would need a group name. We would need some type of symbol for our group. We could include that in our clothing. We'd need some type of colors. We would need some style of dress that we would all hold in common. We would need some type of hand signal. We would need to identify some territory over which we would be in control. We would also have to determine what's our initiation ritual and is there a way to leave the gang. And again, most gangs, there is no way to leave them once you get in. So what are some warning signs of impending gang violence in or around the school? Watch for students doing the mad dogging, like the looking tough, looking hard. Watch for the gang hand signs and the showing of the colors. Watch for groups squaring off, or if anybody shows a weapon. And take very seriously any reports of student concerns. They're all worth investigating. So what can a teacher do? Let's start off by looking at what a teacher should not do. Don't make fun of or disrespect a gang or any groups. Don't insult potential gang members. Don't humiliate or call them out. Don't favor one group or another. Don't let the issues slide. Investigate. Don't imitate gang clothing or hand signs or symbols or anything like that. And don't just focus solely on the negative side of things. It would be ideal, if teachers are in an ideal position, to catch a gang member or someone who's considering joining a gang, and we could maybe help them. Let's watch academics. Let's make sure that students are doing well, performing well academically in school. It has been found that if students aren't doing well in school, it doesn't mean they're going to join a gang, but it is a noted risk factor for gang involvement. Make sure that every student feels wanted and needed and cared for in your classroom and in your school. This reinforces what I always talk about with teachers and students. Let's form positive relationships between the adults in the school and our students. Again, make sure all students feel they belong and that they're valued. Be a good role model to your students. Build positive self-esteem. Make sure that students can feel that sense of belonging in your classroom and through the relationship with you as their teacher, rather than forcing them to seek it elsewhere like in a gang. Address bullies in the classroom very quickly. Don't be afraid to discuss the dangers of gangs openly. Maybe even invite a member of law enforcement in to talk about that. Notice change, because if student behavior is different, then something's different there. Maybe something is causing that. And of course, watch for gang-related symbols. One of the best places in the school to help build self-esteem and that sense of belonging is in extracurricular activities. Encourage students to be involved with athletics and music and theater and other types of extracurricular activities. There they can find a group, they can find belonging, they can feel self-esteem growing and self-respect. Create a positive classroom environment. As you build the relationship and rapport with students, make sure that they know directly that they can come to you and you care about them, and they can come to you with any problems or issues or questions or concerns. Make sure that you're not showing disrespect, but watch for stare downs and challenges, any of the things we've talked about that gangs typically do, like hand signals and flagging their colors and so on. And also language. Some students are using very harsh language in the classroom. And if you see something that might be gang graffiti, make sure that you report it to a school administrator. If law enforcement recognizes it as such, they will have it removed. In terms of classroom management, we establish simple and clear rules for classroom behavior, and we consistently enforce these rules in a calm manner. If we suspect possible gang members in our classroom, don't confront them in front of the group. Don't have their associates present when you're talking to them. Ask them to remain after class to discuss rule violations. You might be the person who can save them, so to speak. You can help them. And gang members could really use the structure that's in a positive classroom. As you connect with suspected gang members outside of class, facilitate rapport and bonding so that, again, students recognize that you care about them, you really care for their welfare and well-being. They may come to see you as a role model, and that makes discipline much easier, and it also provides that structure that they need. And again, they may come to you when they need some help or have questions. Maybe you can help these students. You're in a very unique role to provide that type of help. In summary, hopefully this brief video presentation has made you a little more cognizant, and maybe you can start to recognize some of the clothing, the signs, the graffiti, some of the activities, some of the actions of potential gang members in your classroom or in your school. And also, hopefully you'll recognize that gang members need structure. They have that need to belong and to be accepted. And as a teacher, you want to develop rapport with these students and all students and show them care and interest, that you really do care about them. We also pointed out some specific do's and don'ts when you're managing potential gang members in your classroom. Be careful to respect all of these guidelines, and hopefully this has served as a good, solid beginning introductory piece for you. To wrap up today's online class, having watched this online instructional video and having taken the time to look at the several links that I've provided on Blackboard, I've also provided a gang worksheet that asks you several questions about gangs and gives you a chance to just research and reinforce some of these concepts a little more. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you at our next virtual class.